Welcome everyone, join us today as we delve into the extraordinary life and musical career of Max Merritt, from his humble beginnings in Christchurch, New Zealand, to becoming a household name across Australia and beyond. So let's dive in. Maxwell James Merritt, born the 30th of April 1941, in Christchurch, New Zealand. Born to Jimmy and Eileen Merritt, Max began guitar lessons at 12. Like many teens of the mid-1950s, he was captivated by the rock and roll explosion, especially Bill Haley and Elvis Presley. In 1956, fresh out of school at 15, he formed the Meteors with friends Ross Clancy on sax, Peter Patenay on piano, Ian Glass on bass, and Pete Souden on drums. The group started part-time, playing dances and charity concerts at the local Odeon Theatre, raising thousands for good causes over the next 6 years, while Max apprenticed in his father's bricklaying business. Unusually for the time, Max had the full backing of his parents. With help from Odeon manager Trevor King, they opened their own venue, the Teenage Club, at Christchurch's Railway Hall. Held every Sunday afternoon and evening, it became a runaway success, drawing hundreds of kids weekly. In 1958, Will Schneider replaced Clancy on sax, and by 1959 the club expanded to Wednesdays, making the Meteors the city's top act, regularly attracting crowds of 700 plus. Max also befriended another local hopeful, Ray Columbus of the Invaders, from whom he occasionally borrowed players, including guitarist Dave Russell and multi-instrumentalist Billy Christian. Max earned the ultimate local endorsement when New Zealand's #1 rocker, Johnny Devlin, went out of his way after a major concert to meet him at a charity show. Devlin's manager, Graham Dent, was equally impressed and soon spread the word to top Auckland promoter Harry M. Miller. Christchurch, despite its reputation as a university town, gained an unexpected edge thanks to the arrival of the US military's Operation Deep Freeze the same year, which established a major Antarctic supply base nearby. American servicemen flocked to the Teenage Club and introduced Max and other locals to coveted rock and roll and R&B records and imported Fender instruments, nearly impossible to obtain elsewhere due to trade restrictions, giving Christchurch bands a rare musical advantage as the 60s dawned. In April 1959, the Meteors took a big step forward when promoter Harry M. Miller booked them as the Christchurch support for Johnny O'Keefe's New Zealand tour, and by all accounts, they stole the show. Not long after, key members Will Schneider, Peter Patenay, and Pete Souden departed, prompting Max to rebuild the band with Billy Christian on piano and sax, Rod Gibson on sax, and Bernie Jones on drums. Later that year, Max and the Meteors began recording for HMV, landing local hits with Get a Haircut, Kiss Curl, and Come On Let's Go. Miller then brought Max to Auckland for his Summertime Spectacular, and over the next 2 years, the Meteors became the South Island's top draw, though national recognition still eluded them. By 1961, further changes saw Souden return, Christian shift to bass, and new guitarists including Jeff Cox, later replaced by Peter Williams. In late 1962, both the Meteors and the Invaders farewelled Christchurch with a packed charity concert, attended by the mayor in recognition of the band's fundraising efforts. They soon moved north to Auckland, only to find the Invaders had already conquered the scene. Throughout 1963, the Meteors toured heavily and secured a residency at Auckland's Top 20 Disco. They also played a pivotal role in launching Dinah Lee, then Diane Jacobs, by backing her early recordings. More changes followed, with Mike England on bass, and Johnny Dick on drums, Dick later becoming a familiar face in Australian rock. In November of that year, Max and the Meteors made their first venture across the Tasman, but once again found the Invaders dominating Sydney. Their tough 6-month stint ended with a return to New Zealand, where they cut the Giddy Up Max EP. Though it failed to chart, it led to the Meteors becoming Viking Records' house band, backing artists like Tommy Adderley, Peter Poser, and Dinah Lee, including her breakthrough hit, Don't You Know Yokomo. By year's end, Teddy Toy replaced England on bass, and Graham Dent took over as manager. In December 1964, Graham Dent took the band back to Sydney for a month-long engagement at the Rex Hotel, where they made their Australian TV debut on Johnny O'Keefe's TV show Sing Sing Sing. The Rex shows went so well that they decided to stay on. Within months, Max and the group had earned the admiration of fans and musicians alike, with overseas visitors like Liza Minnelli and Mick Jagger among their growing admirers. In April 1965, they released their first Australian single, So Long Baby, coinciding with the New Zealand release of their second album, Max Merritt's Meteors, recorded with New Zealand producer Eldred Stebbings. The album's mix of styles, from Frankie Lane's I Believe to soul hits like Heat Wave and Rockin' Robin, reflected their dancehall roots. Some critics, like John Dix, saw this diversity as a weakness, but for New Zealand bands of the time, versatility was essential. With dances being the main outlet for live music, bands were expected to play a wide variety of styles, from strict tempo dance tunes to the latest pop hits. September brought another shake-up when Billy Thorpe lured away Teddy Toy and Johnny Dick to form his new Aztecs. John Blake, later of Tully, and Bill Fleming briefly stepped in before Jimmy Hill, ex-Invaders, and a returning Billy Christian completed the lineup. This version of the Meteors recorded one single, a version of Zipper-Dee-Doo-Dah, in early 1966, a move that some saw as a nod to the cabaret circuit, though it still fit the era's eclectic dance scene. Tensions flared when Hill left after a scuffle with Max, with Fleming filling in for the Meteors spot supporting the Rolling Stones and the Searchers in February 1966. Soon after, drummer Bruno Lawrence, a jazz-trained musician and former member of Ricky May's band, joined the Meteors. Bruno brought a crucial shift in musical direction, steering them toward a more soulful, R&B-influenced sound. Bruno's impact was felt immediately. In July 1966, their single, Shake, a pounding cover of Sam Cooke's classic, backed by the Four Tops, I Can't Help Myself, became their biggest New Zealand hit to date and charted modestly in Sydney. That August, they returned to New Zealand for a successful tour, recording the enduring Fannie Mae, with the addition of pianist John Charles and a brass section led by Mike Gibbs. The Meteors maintained a strong reputation, making occasional visits to Melbourne and other cities, but despite their credibility, they struggled to break into the charts. Manager Graham Dent increasingly pushed them toward the cabaret and club circuit, tempting with promises of steady and lucrative work, as many others were doing at the time. By early 1967, the band reluctantly accepted Dent's offer to work as a cabaret act on a Pacific cruise liner. However, just before departure, Peter Williams and Billy Christian announced they were leaving. The cruise marked a pivotal moment. Bruno suggested replacing the departing guitarist with a saxophonist, and recommended his former bandmate Bob Birtles, a formidable tenor player with ties to the Sydney jazz and rock scenes. Max agreed, and this new lineup, briefly featuring Williams, Lawrence, Christian, and Birtles, performed on the cruise, but sadly left no known recordings. Once at sea, Bruno's already notorious antics escalated, and he eventually departed in Auckland, leaving Max to cover on drums for the final leg back to Sydney. Around the same time, Graham Dent realized he couldn't mold the Meteors into the cabaret act he'd hoped for. Meeting them in Auckland, he resigned as manager and urged Max to abandon any teen idol dreams. But it was also in Auckland that a pivotal moment occurred. Max dropped in on sax player Jimmy Sloggett, who played him Otis Redding's Dictionary of Soul. Redding's powerful version of Try a Little Tenderness floored Max and reshaped his musical vision. Max would soon make the song his own, earning a place as one of its finest interpreters, second only to Redding. Back in Sydney, Peter Williams and Billy Christian left the band. Peter soon joined Melbourne's soul group The Groove, alongside Rod Stone, another ex-Libretto and Playboys guitarist. Max began yet another rebuild, but there was no question about keeping Bob Birtles. He added flamboyant New Zealand-born bassist John Yuck Harrison, whose resume included the Keel Isles, the Invaders, the Brew, and Levi Smith's Clefs. The final key recruit was veteran jazz drummer Stuart Stewie Spear. Stewie's portly frame, grey hair, beard, and trademark cloth cap made him instantly recognizable. The new-look Meteors debuted at the Martin Place Disco in May 1967 and shortly after moved to Melbourne. Gigs were scarce, and while driving to a show in Morwell on June 24, disaster struck. Their van collided head-on with a truck near Bunyip. Only Yuck, sitting among the gear in the back, escaped injury. Max, Bob, and Stewie were trapped in the cab and took over an hour to be rescued. Max suffered severe head injuries and lost his right eye. Bob's leg was permanently damaged, and Stewie endured crushed legs, broken arms, and partial finger loss, requiring 4 months in hospital and a slow recovery. Their plans for England were shelved, and they played just one comeback gig at Bertie's Disco on December 2, 1967. By mid-1968, they were back full-time, helped by regular TV appearances on Uptight, regaining their status as one of Australia's top live acts. They placed third in the Hoadley's Battle of the Sounds National Final, behind The Groove, which now featured former Meteor Peter Williams. The new Meteors lineup was unconventional. Max had short hair, Stewie was a graying bearded veteran over 40, and Bob looked more beatnik than rockstar, but they remained a musician's band, respected for their uncompromising, hard-working ethic. Their legendary partying likely contributed to Christian's earlier departure. By 1969, Max was firmly crowned Australia's King of Soul. Back in Melbourne, he opened his own venue, Max's Place, reminiscent of Christchurch's teenage club. Regular touring and GI-heavy Sydney gigs kept the Meteors busy. After 3 years without a release, they finally recorded Max Merritt and the Meteors at Armstrong Studios with RCA producer Ron Wills. The album was a landmark, hailed by critics like Glenn A. Baker and Ian McFarlane as one of Australia's finest soul recordings. It included 6 original songs, a standout cover of Fannie Mae, the quirky instrumental, Turkish Bath, and their breakout hit, a blazing version of Jerry Butler's Western Union Man, which reached number 13 nationally. The LP hit number 8 in mid-1970, but RCA bafflingly failed to release further singles from it. In a first for an Australian rock band, the ABC filmed Max Merritt and the Meteors in concert, a 4-part special featuring the band solo, then with brass, and finally with a full show band. Some footage may still survive, including clips of Friary Muse, aired on GTK, possibly from the series. In January 1970, they performed at Australia's first rock festival, the Pilgrimage for Pop at Arumbar. Shortly after, Yuck Harrison was dismissed following a subpar performance. His replacement came via a fateful phone call from Dave Russell, former Invaders guitarist, who joined on bass. The Meteors recorded the Stray Cats album later that year. They gigged steadily, including farewell shows in October 1970, before finally heading to the UK. Like many Aussie bands, they struggled to break through. Singles like Good Feeling, Hello LA, Bye Bye Birmingham, and Let It Slide failed to chart, and RCA soon dropped them. For Aussie fans, the highlights of this period were undoubtedly Max Merritt and the Meteors' triumphant return back. They wowed the crowds at the Sunbury Festival in January 1972, part of which appeared in the Sunbury documentary, followed by a national pub tour and another Sunbury appearance in 1973. Back in London, the Meteors worked the pub circuit relentlessly, steadily building a strong following. As John Dix noted, they were one of the cornerstone bands of the emerging British pub rock scene, alongside Brinsley Schwarz and Dr. Feelgood, though often overlooked in UK music histories. They also secured support slots with big names like Slade, the Moody Blues, the Post-Morrison Doors, Mountain, and others, appearing at major festivals and playing key venues like the Speakeasy and the Marquee. By 1974, the band's hard work was paying off, and a breakthrough seemed close. Then disaster struck when manager Peter Raphael disappeared, leaving him stranded, broke, and burdened with debts. They had to sell their transport and find cheaper lodgings. Birtles joined jazz rock outfit Nucleus, Stewie toured Europe with Alexis Corner, Dave Russell returned to New Zealand, later producing Split Enz's debut album, and Max went back to bricklaying. Undeterred, Max and Stewie rebuilt the Meteors later that year, bringing in British players John Gord on guitar and piano, Howard Fuzz Dennis on bass and guitar, and Barry Duggan on sax. The band's sound shifted from soul covers to straight-ahead rock. Duggan was soon replaced by Lance Dixon, whose keyboards, combined with Gord's slide guitar, defined their new style. In May 1975, Clive Davis, establishing Arista Records UK, signed the Meteors after seeing them at the Nashville Rooms on the recommendation of Rolling Stone journalist Andrew Bailey. Their first single for Arista, the swampy, foot-stomping, A Little Easier, was released in July. It showcased Max's powerful vocals and Gord's Leslie-treated slide guitar, a potential hit, but sadly ignored in the UK. Their first Arista album, A Little Easier, and the second single, Slippin Away, arrived in September. In Australia, Slippin Away became their biggest hit, peaking at number 2, while the album soared to number 4, also hitting number 5 in their homeland New Zealand. Despite strong airplay in London, distribution issues stalled its UK success. In May to June 1976, the Meteors returned for a hugely successful Australian tour, coinciding with the release of their second Arista LP, Out of the Blue. Their new single, a re-recording of Let It Slide, became a hit, though follow-up, Mr. Horizontal, did not chart. The tour drew over 30,000 fans, and their Dallas Brooks Hall shows were recorded for the live album Back Home Live. By early 1977, however, the UK pub circuit was fading under the weight of punk and new wave. Max disbanded the Meteors later in 1976, signed with Polydor, and headed to Nashville to record. He relocated to Los Angeles in 1977, where he lived for the remainder of his life. He toured Australia in 1979 with a 12-piece band promoting his album Black Plastic Max, and returned again in 1980 for one final tour with Stewie. Stewie, back in Sydney, remained active despite health issues from his 1967 accident and passed away in 1986, aged 58. Birtles also returned to Sydney, where he became a respected jazz musician. Max continued to make occasional returns to Australia, releasing singles like Prove It and Mean Green Fighting Machine, a Canberra Raiders promo. He toured in 1991 with Brian Cadd, again in 1996, and performed on ABC's Club Buggery. In April 2001, just shy of his 60th birthday, Max toured again, reuniting with Jimmy Sloggett and teaming up with Doug Parkinson, delivering stellar performances of classics like Fannie Mae, Let It Slide, and Slippin Away. He returned for the Long Way to the Top tour in 2002, and again in 2004 for Stevie Wright's farewell tour. After more than 4 decades in the business, Max Merritt was rightly regarded as a legend. However, in 2007, fans were saddened to learn he had developed Goodpasture's syndrome, an autoimmune disease that affects the lungs and kidneys, requiring dialysis 3 times a week. Largely confined to his Los Angeles home, Max faced health and financial challenges, but friends and fans rallied back in Australia. An all-star benefit concert at Melbourne's Palais Theatre on the 21st of October 2007 raised $200,000 for medical bills and support. On the 1st of July 2008, Max was inducted by Glenn A. Baker into the ARIA Hall of Fame, where he performed Slipping Away, with Casey Chambers and Bill Chambers joining him on stage. Sadly, on the 24th of September 2020, Max Merritt passed away in Los Angeles at age 79, 13 years after being diagnosed with Goodpasture syndrome. He is survived by his daughter Kelly, son Josh and 3 grandchildren, Aiden, Zoe and Kylie. I Can Dream, released on November 27, 2020, was Max's final album before his death, showcasing his enduring soulful talent. And there you have it. Though Max Merritt is no longer with us, his music and spirit continues to resonate to fans and fellow musicians alike, not only in New Zealand and Australia, but worldwide. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos just like this. Take care and bye for now.